Good afternoon and welcome to UK Visas and Immigration webinar on student visas to the UK. Today's presentation will be presented to you to give you all of the relevant information that you need to make your application, to understand the criteria and the process involved in getting your student visa. Please understand this is not meant to be a definitive guide to UK visas for students. It is meant as a reminder and an update to make sure people understand how to apply and what is required. For full detailed information, we do encourage you to look at the visa website. So, before we start, let's have a look at some global visa statistics for student visas. 92% of student or Tier 4 applications are successful. We've had a 7% increase in the number of Tier 4 applications received in the last year, and 96% of all visa applications issued within 15 working days. So as you can see, these are some pretty impressive statistics and show that a lot of the visas are issued for people to go and study in the UK. Now there's 3 student routes that we'd like to explore today. The first of these being the Tier 4 General Student Visa route. This will be the main topic of conversation. And then we will briefly touch upon Tier 4 Child Visas and Short-Term Student Visas, which were formerly known as Student Visitors. So let's have a look at Tier 4 General Visa. A Tier 4 General Visa is suitable for somebody who wants to go to the UK to study as an adult student or for post-16 education. A Tier 4 General student is allowed to study for a course that is generally longer than 6 months, although it can be shorter, and we'll cover this later. That you have applied for a course with an approved Tier 4 sponsor. A list of these can be found on our website. That you've been issued with a Certificate of Acceptance for Study, also known as a CAS, and that you provide all the relevant supporting documentation, and again we'll cover this later in another slide. A Tier 4 General student cannot do the following. They cannot work more hours than stated in the guidance. They cannot change institutions without first notifying UK visas, and they cannot cease studying without notifying UK visas. So let's just explore these in a little bit more detail. You can go and study on a course that is longer than 6 months. In some circumstances, people will be going for less than 6 months. And this is normally people that are going on a pre-sessional course or a foundation course of some kind. So what we recommend you do is apply for your Tier 4 General Visa. You go to the UK, you sit your pre-sessional or foundation course, and when you've passed that and get your unconditional offer to go on to further studies, apply for an extension of your visa, or if you're returning home, apply for a new visa before you go back to the UK. Now, as I mentioned, you must have applied to go to a registered institution, and a full list of these can be found on the UK website for immigration. This is updated regularly, and I would recommend that you check this before you apply. The Confirmation of Acceptance for Study. Now, this is the key to your application. This is a very important document. This is an electronic document that is issued by your institution to you as an individual. Your institution will normally send you a PDF version of this document, and all of the information contained within this document is used to assist you in filling out your application form and helping you to understand what documentary evidence you need to provide. As I mentioned, the documentary evidence will be explained shortly. Now, to clarify about what you can't do, and this is just as important, I mentioned that you can't work beyond the hours permitted. Now, hours for working are anywhere between 20 hours, 10 hours to 0 hours. And these will be clearly stated on your visa or your residence permit. So please do check. If in doubt, you can check with the Home Office. If you wish to change an institution and change your course of study, which some people occasionally do want to do, this is perfectly acceptable, but before you start your course of study or before you change institutions, you must apply to the Home Office and notify them and apply for a fresh period of stay. Alternatively, if you return back home and you wish to change institutions, you must apply for a fresh CAS and apply again for a new visa for the new institution and course of study before you return back to the UK. Going on from that, some people unfortunately have to finish their studies in the UK early and return back home. In this case, we would urge you to notify UK Visas and Immigration so that they can update your records accordingly to save you any problems in the future should you reapply. Now I'd like to just move on to the supporting documents that are required for your application. Now before I go into any more detail on this, there are some countries that are designated in the immigration rules as being low-risk countries. And as such, some of the documentation they do not need to provide. And I will confirm that as I'm discussing it. However, I should stress that the immigration rules must still be met and that the documents should still be at hand because the visa officer can ask for these documents at a later date. So please do pay attention, even if you know you qualify for what we call differentiation. So, what documents do people need? Everybody will need a current passport or travel document, as well as any previous passports they may have, and these can all be submitted with the application. The confirmation of acceptance for study can be submitted to confirm the requirements and the conditions of your study in the UK. Any evidence of your qualifications as specified in the confirmation of acceptance to study need to be at hand and submitted, and these should be original documents. These are the documents which were used to assess your ability to study on your proposed course of study in the UK. And also an English language test if you've not been self-assessed, but we will cover English language testing shortly. Evidence of your finances as detailed in the Tier 4 General Guidance, and please pay special attention to the 28-day rule. So when calculating your finances, you need to take into account whether you're studying inside or out of London, and also the amount of money that is left to pay, if any, for your course of study. This needs to be total up, and the total amount of money should be kept for 28 days in your bank account. At the end of the 28 days, you can then get your bank book or your account updated if you need to, and you must use that evidence within 1 month of that date to support your application. Certain applicants will require an Academic Technology Approval Scheme certificate. I would recommend that you talk to your higher education institution about this and also check the ATAS website. And a tuberculosis certificate for countries within the region that require this document. So let's just look into this a little bit further. As I mentioned, the passport, self-explanatory. The certificate or confirmation of acceptance for study, again, we've discussed that. The evidence of qualifications. Now, as I mentioned, some countries will qualify for what we call differentiation, which is where you can self-declare on the application form that you have held these documents and have these documents available in their original format. You don't need to submit them, but you must have them at hand if the visa officer comes back to ask. So again, please check the website to see if you qualify for this differentiation. The evidence of finances, please pay special attention to the 28-day rule, especially if you are self-declaring on the application form. And we will cover later the documents which can be submitted to show this. The ATAS certificate, if you require it, and also the tuberculosis certificate, which regardless of if you qualify for differentiation or not, you need to submit. I would urge you to look at the information based on our website at www.gov.uk/check-UK-visa. What we want to look at next is dependents. One question that we're asked quite often is, I'm going to study in the UK and I'd like my family to accompany me while I'm there. Now, dependents can go to the UK in certain circumstances, and they are if the main applicant has been granted entry clearance or leave to remain in order to undertake a course of study at postgraduate level for 12 months or longer. Or the main applicant is a government-sponsored student who is applying for or has been granted entry clearance or leave to remain to undertake a course of study longer than 6 months. Now, the documents required to support dependents on their visa application are as followed. We need to be satisfied that the relevant financial support is there, the maintenance and accommodation, but this will depend on the location of studies, again whether it's inside or outside of London, the duration of studies for the main applicant, and also the number of family members. Now, this will be case by case, and what I would like you to do, if you can please, is look at the points-based system policy dependent guidance, which clearly states the amount of money and the circumstances in which that money needs to be provided. Again, the 28-day rule does apply to this, so the applicant will need to make sure that the money has been held for the full time. Marriage certificate, family register certificates and evidence of cohabitation also need to be shown, and birth certificate for children. Further detailed information, please refer to the PBS Policy Dependent Guidance on gov.uk. So just to clarify, the marriage certificate and the family registration documents can be provided to show that it's a subsistent relationship. If you are in a relationship outside of marriage, then you can provide evidence for the last 2 years that you've been living together in a relationship akin to marriage, and provide documents in the main applicant's name and the dependent's name to confirm that you've been living together in a subsistent relationship. And of course, if you have children, the birth certificates to confirm that the children are yours. Let's move on now to look at the knowledge of English, or the CELTS, Secure English Language Testing. To be granted a Tier 4 visa, in most cases you will need to have a good knowledge of English. From April the 6th, 2015, only IELTS tests taken at IELTS test centres are acceptable. Full information can be found at www.ielts.org. Secure English language tests taken before April the 5th are still acceptable until November the 5th, 2015. So if you have a language test which was sat before April the 5th under the old language testing guidance, you can use that as long as you pay for your application online by November the 5th. Higher education institutions can still self-assess using their choice of exam. Test dates are normally available within 28 days of booking, and results available within 7 days of the test. One question that we're asked quite a lot is, can I retake an IELTS test if I fail, and how often can I do this? The simple answer is yes. You can take the test if you fail again, and there is no time period that you have to wait. And pre-sessional courses that are being sat in the UK, if you are self-assessed, that is perfectly acceptable as long as it's listed on the CAS, or you can present the English language exam if required. So again, please make sure that if you're applying for a language test from the 6th of April onwards, that it's only an IELTS test. If you have a current English language test that was sat before April the 5th under the old guidance, then you can use this as long as you have paid for your application online by the 5th of November. A higher education institute can still self-assess you, and as mentioned before, this must be clearly listed on your CAS to show that the institution is happy with your ability to study on that course of study and that your level of English meets the requirement. I would now like to cover the immigration health surcharge. This was also introduced in April this year. This is registration and payment to the immigration health surcharge, and it ensures that non-EEA migrants coming to the UK for more than 6 months are entitled to access the National Health Service. Registration and online payment is at the time of application, and this is a mandatory requirement. Payment is £150 for students for each year of their stay and must be paid at the time of application. So for example, if a student is going to the UK for 2 years, they would have to pay £300. If they have family members, those family members would ordinarily pay the same money at the time of their application. For all other categories, it's £200 per year. National Health Service care is generally free of charge, but it may sometimes incur a charge for services even a permanent resident or a British national would pay, i.e. dental care or prescriptions. The fee is non-refundable if the application leaves the UK before the visa expiry. So for example, if you've paid for 2 years and you decide to leave the UK after a year, the additional year would not be refunded. There are exemptions in place for Australian and New Zealand nationals and for those visitors where a grant of stay is less than 6 months. So this is a mandatory fee. You do have to pay it. We would ask you to pay this at the same time as your application. If, however, you forget, you can pay it at the application centre, or you will receive an email from Manila which gives you permission to pay for that fee within 7 days of application receipt. However, I would urge you to pay this at the time of application to save time and to ensure that you get your visa without any further delays or worries. Next we'll come on to the Biometric Residence Permit. Any non-EEA national staying more than 6 months will be requested to apply for a British Residence Permit and collect it within 10 days of arriving in the United Kingdom. There is no additional fee for the BRP, and the visa application fees will remain the same. Vignettes will be issued for a period of 30 days, and I will clarify this in a little bit more detail. In some cases, a BRP may be collected directly from the higher education institutions. Upon arrival in the UK, the passport and decision letter is presented to the immigration officer. The BRP must be collected within 10 days of arrival in the UK at their local post office or higher education institution. And the local post office is chosen by the postal code used on the visa application form. Now, what will happen is that the residence permit will be issued or sent to the post office based on the postcode you put on your visa application form. So please make sure that this is very clear and that you type it correctly. You can also apply to have your residence permit sent to an alternative collection point or your higher education institution. But I would urge you to talk to your education institution to see that they have permission to do this, and if not, to have it sent to your post office nearest to your accommodation in the UK. What will happen is when you receive your passport back with the visa endorsed in it, it will be for a period of 30 days. You then have that 30 days to enter the UK, and you will also be issued with a letter which confirms where you should pick up your residence permit upon entry to the UK. So, we would now like to cover Tier 4 Child Visa. The Tier 4 Child Visa is for people who want to go to the UK to study at an institution which is an independent fee-paying school, if aged between 4 and 15 years old, and to study at an institution which holds a Tier 4 licence. And as mentioned earlier, all of these are on the UK Visas website. You must have suitable arrangements in place for your travel, reception and care in the UK. And Tier 4 child visa holders are not allowed to study at an institution which is not viewed as independent fee paying, change institutions without first informing UK visas, and after the care arrangements have been put in place as a condition of the visa without forming UK visas. So this can't be changed. So one thing to bear in mind with the child visa is that a lot of children will be going to boarding schools, and that will be listed on the certificates. If they are staying with guardians, then there are additional requirements in place, and again I'd like you to look at the guidance to see that the requirements are met and that the guardian provides the relevant information to show that they meet the requirements. Again, the visa holder is not allowed to study at an institution that's not registered. If they want to change institutions, they can, but like the Tier 4 general student, they must get permission first. And if once the care arrangements are in place, there's any changes, these must be updated and notified to UK Visas. So moving on to the short-term student visa, which some of you may also know as the student visit visa. And this is suitable for people who want to study in the UK for a short period of time, on a short course, no more than 6 months, or for the extended student visit visa, 11 months. You must be studying with an institution that's accredited by a recognised body. And student visit visa holders are not allowed to work in the UK or extend their stay in the UK. So, if you wish to go to the UK as a student, short-term student, if you're a visa national, you must apply for a visa before you go. If you're a non-visa national, for example, if you're from Japan, Korea, other countries in the region that don't require a visa, you can go to the UK and present your enrolment letter and evidence that you have suitable funds to support yourself in the UK and present that to the immigration officer, who will then land you in the UK to continue or start your studies. If you're going as an extended student visitor, then you must apply for the relevant entry clearance before you go. So you must apply for the visa regardless if you're a visa or non-visa national. With an extended student visitor visa, there is currently no requirement to pay for the immigration health surcharge. But please refer to the immigration rules regularly in case there's any changes to this. So now let's just have a look at the visa application process. So you've got all your documents together, you're ready to apply. What do? You make an appointment, you apply online, and you make your appointment to visit the application centre. Your biometric details are enrolled at the visa application centre, documents are submitted, and a credibility interview in some circumstances and in some countries will be taken. The biometric and biographical details will be checked in the UK, and in the meantime the documents will be sent to the visa section for further checks and for decision making. And one of two occurrences will happen. The visa will be issued, in which case the passport will be returned with the 30-day vignette and also the letter confirming where the residence permit is collected from. Or in some circumstances a visa is refused, unfortunately, but a letter will be included with that to explain exactly why that decision has been made and what the application rights of the application appeals are, if any are given. So that gives you hopefully a general overview of the requirements for Tier 4 general visas and briefly for Tier 4 child and for short-term student. As I mentioned, this isn't meant to be a definitive guide, but it is meant to just make you aware of the criteria and the basic requirements and the application process. Now, we did ask before the presentation for comments, or not comments rather, for questions to be submitted from customers for anything which they would like to be answered specifically at the end of the presentation. Now, we have received some. We received one question from a customer who asked, may I use a passbook from a bank and its translation or statement without letterhead for applying for Tier 4s to show my funds? Now, you remember that we said that bank books or bank statements should be submitted to prove the maintenance and accommodation. Now, the format of these will be either a bank book, if you have it, the original document, or bank statements, or if you have an online bank account, the online bank statements or printouts that must be stamped and signed by your bank before submission. So yes, you can submit those documents, but they must meet that requirement. The other question is, the bank I put money for a Tier 4 visa can't issue bank statements with letterhead. Well, different countries have different administrative procedures. They issue different kind of letters. They have different kinds of paper. Now, if your bank doesn't have letterheaded paper, what we would recommend you do is ask the bank to stamp and sign that document to confirm that it's an original letter been issued by the bank. And then the visa officer will assess the application, and if they request further information, you'll be sent an email to confirm that further information required. Another question we received is, how can the healthcare fee be calculated? Is there a price list that we can refer to? Well, the immigration health surcharge is calculated online. So when you are referred to the website where you enroll your details, you will be asked to put in your immigration category type and the duration of your stay in the UK. And the online system will automatically calculate the fee that you should pay. So it will automatically let you know online how much money should be totaled up and paid in advance. And does an extended student visitor visa pay for the health charge? If not, what cover can they receive in the UK? As I mentioned, the extended student visitor visa does not require the health surcharge to be paid at the moment. If this changes in the future, then please do refer regularly to the website before you apply. But at the moment, it's not required. Healthcare in the UK for visitors is generally for emergency, accident and emergency care. People may choose to take out private medical cover, and if you require additional medical care, I would recommend that you speak to a doctor or general practitioner to see what fees may be incurred. The other question that we were asked, or one more question, was there's some fields on the application form which you can't always fit all of the information in. And one of these is and this is a specific issue for Japan, a lot of questions we get asked is, the passport was issued by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Japan, but I can't fit all of that into the answer on the application form. In which case, that's perfectly okay. If it's the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, you can just put MOFA and just abbreviate it. We'll have the passport anyway to see where it was issued, but if you could just clarify that in the abbreviated form on the application, that's perfectly acceptable. And one other question is, if I use the IELTS certificate, is it the academic test that I sit? For students, it would be the academic test, but again, if you could speak to the British Council and just clarify that at the time of your application when you're sitting your IELTS test, but generally it will be the academic. Okay, so we've come to the end of the presentation today. I'd just like to thank you all for listening to the presentation. I hope it's been useful. As I said, please do look at the gov.uk immigration website for further, more specific information, especially when calculating your finances for the application. It just leaves me to say thank you, and I hope you have a very pleasant stay in the UK, and I hope your studies are beneficial to your future. Thank you very much.